There's a house on your street with a tidy lawn and a 10-year-old sedan in the driveway that nobody looks at twice. The person who lives there is quietly worth more than everyone else on the block combined. You've driven past them 100 times and assumed the loud neighbor 3 doors down, the leased SUV, the watch he keeps mentioning, was the rich one. He isn't. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why the wealthiest people you know are the ones you never noticed. Here is the strange thing about real money in America. The more of it a person actually has, the less you can tell from the outside. It goes almost silent. The flashiest driveway on the street usually belongs to the deepest debt, and the plainest one, the boring car, the faded jacket. The house that never gets remodeled often belongs to the person with a 7-figure account nobody knows about. There is a name for this now. People call it stealth wealth, and it is not an accident. It is a decision the wealthy make on purpose, and once you see the reasons behind it, you cannot unsee them. Part of why this feels so backwards is that we have been trained to read wealth exactly wrong. Social media rewards the flash, the unboxing, the keys to the new car, the vacation shot from a balcony. We scroll past 1,000 images a day that quietly teach us that money is something you display. So when we finally meet someone with real wealth and they show us nothing at all, our brains file them under ordinary and move right along. The whole system is calibrated to make the loud look rich and the rich look invisible, and that illusion is exactly what the quiet ones are hiding safely behind. Start with how many of these quiet millionaires are actually out there. As of 2026, there are roughly 24 million millionaires living in the United States. That is close to 1 in every 12 American adults. 1 in 12, which means the odds are good that you already know several and you have no idea because they went out of their way to make sure you couldn't tell. And they don't look the way the movies told you they would. Ramsey Solutions ran one of the largest studies of the wealthy ever done, surveying more than 10,000 millionaires about how they actually live. The results were almost boring. 57% of them use a grocery list every single time they shop. 93% use coupons. A lot of them spend less than $200 a month eating out. 62% went to a regular state or public university, not some elite private school. These are not people burning money to look impressive. They are people who quietly refuse to. The bigger myth that same study destroyed was the idea that wealthy people are born that way. Nearly 80% of American millionaires are first-generation rich. They did not inherit it. A separate study from Northwestern Mutual in late 2025 found the same thing. 79% said their net worth was self-made, and only about 12% inherited any of it. 8 out of 10 of them built it the slow way, mostly by investing steadily in a workplace retirement plan and paying off a house. Only about 15% ever held a big senior title like chief executive. Teachers actually rank among the most common jobs on the list. Engineers, accountants, small business owners, the kind of person who mowed their own lawn for 30 years and drove the same truck the whole time. And the number of them keeps climbing. Fidelity now counts more than 500,000 people whose workplace retirement account alone has crossed $1 million, and that group grew by more than a quarter in a single recent year. Almost none of those people look rich. They just kept feeding the same account decade after decade while everyone around them was busy looking the part. And here is why that detail matters more than almost any other. If 4 out of 5 millionaires built it themselves, out of ordinary jobs and ordinary paychecks, then the quiet path is not some secret reserved for people born lucky. It is a set of choices, repeated patiently over a long time, that nearly anyone with a steady income can copy. The barrier was never a trust fund. The barrier is that the quiet path looks like nothing while you are walking it, and the loud path looks like everything. So most people abandon the boring road and chase the exciting one straight into a hole. Nowhere does this show up more clearly than in the driveway. When you ask people to guess what a millionaire drives, they say Mercedes, they say BMW. They say something Italian and low to the ground. The real answer is almost funny. The single most common car brand among American millionaires is Toyota at around 16%. Right behind it is Honda at 15%. An Experian study found that 61% of households earning over $250,000 a year do not drive a luxury brand at all. They drive the same dependable, unremarkable cars as everyone else. And this goes all the way to the very top. For years, the founder of Amazon drove a Honda Accord. The man who runs one of the biggest social networks on earth wears the same plain gray shirt most days and has driven a Honda too. Warren Buffett, one of the richest human beings alive, still lives in the same modest Omaha house he bought back in 1958 for about $31,000. These are people who could buy a fleet of supercars before breakfast. They choose the boring car on purpose, and that single choice is the whole story in miniature. So if the wealthy can afford anything, and they choose to look like nothing, the real question is why. Why does money get quieter the more of it you have? There are a handful of reasons, and each one will change how you see the people around you. The first reason is the coldest one. To the wealthy, showing off is a tax, and they refuse to pay it. Think about what a status purchase actually does to your money. A luxury SUV that stickers at $70,000 starts losing value the second you drive it home, and a new car can shed a big chunk of its worth in just the first few years. It is a shrinking asset that also happens to shout. Compare that to a reliable car at $28,000 that does the exact same job of getting you places. The gap between those two choices is $42,000. Take that difference and invest it in a simple index fund earning about 8% a year, and in 30 years, it grows into more than $420,000. That is the real price of the fancy car. Not $70,000, but something closer to $400,000 in future wealth you quietly handed away to impress people at a stoplight. You do not even need a spare $42,000 sitting around for this to bite. Even $500 a month, which is roughly the size of an average car payment today, invested steadily at that same 8%, becomes about $745,000 over 30 years. The wealthy simply chose to feed that number instead of the dealership. Same money, wildly different ending. And the flashy car is never just the car. It drags a whole ecosystem behind it. The higher insurance, the premium fuel, the pricier repairs. Sometimes even the nicer neighborhood and the bigger house that start to feel required to match it. One loud purchase quietly multiplies into a dozen more. The wealthy see the entire chain, not just the sticker, and every dollar spent looking rich is a dollar that can never make them rich. So they stop spending it. The second reason is about who you are actually trying to convince. Loud spending is almost always a message aimed at other people. It says, "Look at me, I made it, I matter." And the ones who need to send that message the loudest are usually the least sure it's true. New money, insecure money, the money that has something to prove and no proof yet, that is the money that shouts. It buys the proof because it does not yet feel real on the inside. Real, settled wealth stops needing the applause. When your bank account genuinely has your back, the opinion of a stranger in a parking lot becomes worth exactly nothing to you. That retired shop teacher on your street, the one I mentioned at the start, a man we'll call Gordon, spent 40 years quietly filling his retirement account and never once felt the itch to prove anything to the neighbors. He already knew what he had. The person who has to tell you they're doing well usually isn't. The one who never brings it up often is. There is a piece of psychology hiding underneath all of this that makes it even sharper. The thrill of a new toy fades astonishingly fast. Buy the dream car, and within a few weeks, the excitement flattens out and it becomes just the thing you drive, while the payment stays for years. Chasing that feeling means always needing a bigger, louder purchase to get the same short hit, and it never actually ends. The wealthy tend to figure this out early. The rush from a new object is temporary, but the calm that comes from real security never wears off. Once you have felt the second one, the first one starts to look like a scam. This whole shift away from flashing wealth is old enough that scholars gave it names. Back in 1899, an economist named Thorstein Veblen coined the phrase conspicuous consumption. He watched the wealthy of his day burn money on visible, useless luxury for one reason: to broadcast their status to everyone below them. For most of the last century, that was the game. A bigger house, a louder car, more of everything, all of it pointing outward at the crowd. But something changed. A researcher at the University of Southern California named Elizabeth Currid Halkett studied decades of American spending data and found the elite had quietly switched strategies. In her 2017 work she called The New Game Inconspicuous Consumption. Instead of flashing logos at the masses, the modern wealthy pour their money into things you cannot see from the street. Elite education for their kids, the best doctors, the trainers, the care that keeps them healthy for decades, experiences, and above all time, the quiet services that buy back their own hours. The signals still exist, but now they point sideways, toward other insiders who recognize them rather than down at people meant to be impressed. A charcoal cashmere coat with no logo says nothing to you and everything to someone who knows. That is the entire point. The real status symbol became not needing you to notice at all. The next reason is simpler and more human. Looking rich paints a target on your back. The moment people believe you have money, everything around you shifts. Friends start doing quiet math about what you owe them. Distant relatives resurface. Every conversation grows a hidden agenda you can feel but can't quite name. And in a very real sense, visible wealth turns you into a mark for theft, for scams, for the loan that never comes back, and the business idea that only needs your check to work. The wealthy learn this fast, often the hard way. Discretion protects the money, and it protects the relationships too, because when nobody can tell what you have, the people around you have to like you for something other than your wallet. Quiet is not just cheaper, it is safer, and it keeps your life your own. And there is one more truth that takes all the air out of the flex. People notice your things far less than you imagine. You clock the nicest car in the parking lot for about 4 seconds, then forget it forever. And everyone else does exactly the same with yours. The audience you are spending all that money to impress is barely paying attention, and the few who are will not remember by tomorrow. The wealthy understood that the applause you are buying is faint, brief, and gone almost the instant it arrives. It is a terrible trade, and they simply refuse to make it. If this is reshaping how you think about the money around you, subscribe and stick around, because breaking down the quiet habits that actually build wealth is what this channel does every single week. Now let's talk about what the wealthy are really buying with all that silence, because it is the most important part of the whole thing. Here is what the quiet ones understood that the loud ones missed. The real luxury was never a car or a watch. It was freedom, a paid-off house, retirement accounts filled to the top, an emergency fund deep enough that a lost job becomes an inconvenience instead of a catastrophe. What the wealthy are actually buying is the power to say no and mean it to a bad boss, to a deal that doesn't serve them, to a life they never chose in the first place. Money that is invested quietly becomes options, and options are the one thing you can never see from a car window. It is invisible on purpose. Think about what that freedom looks like on an ordinary Tuesday. The boss makes an unreasonable demand, and the quiet millionaire can simply decline, because a few missed paychecks would change nothing about their life. The industry shifts, and they can retrain or rest or start something of their own on their own timeline. A family emergency lands, and they can drop everything without the whole house of cards collapsing. That is what all those boring decisions were buying the entire time. Not stuff, room to breathe. The loud spender, meanwhile, is often trapped in the exact job he hates, precisely because he needs every check to keep covering the image he built. A nurse who later opened her own small clinic, someone we'll call Deirdre, drove the same aging Camry for 15 years while her coworkers upgraded their cars every couple of seasons. They teased her about it constantly. Meanwhile, she was funneling the money they spent on payments straight into investments and a high-yield savings account. Right now, those accounts pay as much as 4.5%, while the average American savings account pays a limp 0.38%. On $50,000 parked in the right place, that is $2,250 a year working for her, against about $190 for everyone still using the account their bank handed them. She looked like she was falling behind. She was building an exit, and that quiet gap was the entire plan. There is a longer game running underneath all of this too. Quiet wealth tends to survive, and loud wealth tends to evaporate. America is in the middle of the biggest handoff of money in its history, with something close to $90 trillion expected to pass from older generations down to their heirs over the coming decades. But study after study shows that a large share of family fortunes get spent away within a generation or two of being inherited, usually by heirs who learned how to look rich instead of how to stay rich. The families that hold on are almost always the quiet ones, the households where wealth was a habit and a set of values rather than a performance. What you model at the dinner table outlasts anything you ever park in the driveway. Now flip the whole thing around, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. If the truly wealthy are hiding it, then who exactly is doing all the flashing? A lot of the time, it is people who cannot actually afford it. The loud spender with the leased German car and the designer everything is very often financing that entire image on credit, one missed payment away from it all coming apart. The data backs this up. Around 8% of people earning under $100,000 a year still buy themselves a luxury car, stretching hard for a look they have not earned yet and paying interest for the privilege. Go back to that loud neighbor, the one we'll call Dominic. New truck every couple of years, the watch he keeps mentioning, vacations posted all over social media for everyone to admire. On paper, he looks like the richest man on the street. In reality, the truck is financed, the watch is on a payment plan, and his savings are nearly empty. The chase to look wealthy is the exact thing keeping him from ever becoming wealthy. And the quiet man, 3 doors down, in the 10-year-old sedan, could buy and sell him 10 times over without blinking or ever saying a word about it. That contrast points straight at the trap almost everyone falls into. Comparison is the fastest way to go broke. The second you start measuring your life against the loudest people around you, you begin spending money you don't have on things you don't need to impress people who are not thinking about you at all. Every dollar handed over to keep up in that race gets transferred to a version of success that isn't even real, given to a crowd that will forget your car by the time they reach the end of the block. The wealthy stepped off that track a long time ago. They quit a game the moment they realized it could only be lost. Notice, too, what the flash actually earns you in return. Not respect, not really. The person impressed by your new car mostly feels a flicker of envy or quietly wonders how you can possibly afford it, or files you away as someone trying a little too hard. Real respect gets built on how you treat people and what you actually do, never on the badge stuck to the front of your car. The wealthy learned that the very thing they were trying to buy with the flex, the genuine regard of other people, was never for sale in a showroom in the first place. This is the idea that ties the whole thing together. Your wealth is not what you spend. It is what you manage to keep. Every status purchase you skip is not deprivation. It is a deposit into the version of your life where you never have to worry about money again. The quiet millionaires figured out that the distance between looking rich and being rich is enormous, and they picked being rich every single time. They took the same dollars everyone else was burning on appearances and pointed them straight at assets that grow. That is the whole secret. It is almost annoyingly simple, and it is just very hard to do while your neighbor is showing off in the driveway right next door. Once you know the pattern, you start spotting these people everywhere. They drive something sensible and a little older, and they keep it until it dies. Money rarely comes up when they talk, and they get visibly uncomfortable when other people brag about it. Watch them ask what things cost and genuinely care about the answer, even though they could clearly afford not to. Their home is comfortable rather than impressive, usually in a neighborhood one notch below what their bank account would actually allow. They pay in full and make no drama about it. Every one of those small tells points at the same quiet decision made long ago. That being wealthy would always matter more than seeming wealthy. So how do you actually put this to work in your own life? You start by treating that plain driveway as a strategy instead of a compromise. Buy the reliable car, let it get old with a little pride, and invest the difference the flashier version would have cost you. Put your money into things that grow, index funds, retirement accounts, a home you actually pay off long before you spend it on things that shrink. Automate the whole process so the investing happens every month whether you feel motivated or not, because willpower fails and systems don't. Keep your cash reserve somewhere that actually pays you, not in an account earning almost nothing. And when the itch shows up to prove something to people who honestly are not thinking about you nearly as much as you fear, remember what it truly costs. A moment of admiration from a stranger, paid for with years of your own freedom. The wealthy did that math a long time ago, and they always land on the same side of it. None of this means you can never enjoy your money. The quiet ones spend plenty on the things that genuinely matter to them. A good trip, a comfortable home, time with the people they love. The difference is that they spend on purpose, for themselves, rather than on autopilot for an audience. Every dollar has a job, and impressing a stranger is not one of the jobs on the list. Which brings us back to that quiet house on your street, that tidy lawn, the unremarkable car, a person you never once gave a second thought to. They were not falling behind, they were miles ahead, and they simply chose not to announce it to anyone. That is the pattern once you finally learn to see it. The richer people get, the quieter they get, because they understand at last that wealth was never about being seen. It was about being free. So I want to hear from you on this one. Do you know one of these quiet millionaires, the person nobody suspected until you somehow found out the truth? Or have you caught yourself buying things to impress people you don't even really like? Maybe this whole idea just flipped a switch for you about the car sitting in your own driveway right now. Tell me your story down in the comments, what you have seen, what you have lived through, what you learned along the way, and what you are going to start doing differently after today. I read them, and the best conversations on this whole channel happen right there. And if you want to understand why almost nobody figures this out until much later in life, it comes down to the money lessons schools never bothered to teach us, the ones that quietly decide who ends up wealthy and who ends up loudly broke. That is exactly what the next video breaks down. and it is the perfect place to keep going from here.